Before you were born, someone was already writing your story. What if I told you that 40 different people, across 1,500 years, wrote a single book, and every word pointed to the same ending? What if I told you that book predicted the exact city, the exact method, and the exact words a man would say when he died, written 1,000 years before it happened? What if I told you that book is sitting in 5 billion homes right now, and most people have never actually read it? Today we fix that. In the next 35 minutes, I'm going to take you on the most jaw-dropping story ever written. From a garden where everything went perfect, to a cross where everything went wrong, to an empty tomb that changed everything forever. Don't skip. Don't look away. Because every 30 seconds, something in this story is going to absolutely wreck you. Stay with me. Picture absolute nothing. No space, no time, no sound, and then a voice. Let there be light. And just like that, 13.8 billion years of physics begins in one sentence. Scientists call this moment the Big Bang. The Bible called it Day One, written 3,400 years ago. In 6 days, the story describes a God who builds the universe like an architect builds a house: sky, land, ocean, stars, animals. And then on day 6, he does something he hasn't done all week. He pauses. He reaches into the dust of the ground and he breathes. And a man opens his eyes for the first time. His name is Adam. And he wakes up in a garden so perfect, so loaded with beauty, that the Bible describes 4 rivers flowing from it, including the Tigris and the Euphrates, which still exist today. Adam was placed in a real geographic location. The Bible gives GPS coordinates for Eden. 2 of those rivers are still on the map. God gives Adam one rule: 1, a garden with literally everything, and just one thing off limits. You already know what he does: a serpent, a woman named Eve, a piece of fruit. And the most catastrophic decision in human history, made in about 30 seconds. And here's what most people miss. The moment Adam and Eve eat that fruit, something dies in them. Not physically, not yet, but spiritually. The connection breaks. They hear God walking in the garden and they hide. Think about that. The first humans, perfect, created to walk with God, and they're hiding behind bushes. Here's the twist nobody talks about. God already knew. He wasn't surprised. In fact, he already had a plan. Keep watching. Fast forward through generations of family collapse. A son kills his brother. Humanity spirals so far into violence that God floods the earth and starts over with one man and his family. Noah. The flood story isn't just in the Bible. There are over 200 flood legends from cultures around the world, including the Sumerians, the Aztecs, the ancient Chinese. Every civilization remembered it differently, but they all remembered it. Noah's family repopulates the earth. People multiply. They build a tower to reach heaven, the Tower of Babel, and God scatters them across the globe. Different languages, different nations, different cultures. And then, God goes quiet for a while. Until one night he calls an old man in a city called Ur. His name is Abram. No army, no throne, no track record, just an old man and a promise. God tells Abram, through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. He's talking to one man in one city about every human being who will ever live. That's the moment the rescue plan goes public. God changes his name to Abraham, father of nations, and promises him a son, even though his wife Sarah is 90 years old and has never had a child. And then, against every biological law, she laughs. And then she gives birth. Isaac is born. Isaac has Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons. And those 12 sons become the 12 tribes of Israel, the nation through which the whole story will flow. But one of those 12 brothers is hated by the others, sold into slavery. His name is Joseph, thrown into a pit, taken to Egypt, thrown into prison, forgotten. This is the part of the story that is going to sound impossible, but every detail is documented. And what happens to Joseph next will change the entire world. Joseph, in prison, has a gift. He can interpret dreams. The Pharaoh of Egypt has a dream no one can explain. Joseph is pulled from prison, stands before the most powerful man on earth, and explains it perfectly. 7 years of abundance, 7 years of famine. Pharaoh makes Joseph the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. The famine comes, and his brothers, the ones who threw him in a pit, come to Egypt to buy food. They don't recognize him. Joseph could destroy them. He has every right to. But instead, he weeps. He reveals himself. He embraces them. And he says something that echoes through the entire Bible. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. That phrase, God using evil for good, becomes the hidden engine of the entire Bible story. It's not just a nice thought. It's the plot. 400 years pass. The Israelites, Joseph's descendants, are now slaves in Egypt, millions of them, under brutal conditions, crying out, and God hears. The Bible says God heard their groaning and remembered his covenant with Abraham, made 400 years earlier. The plan was never canceled. It was just waiting. God raises up a deliverer, a man who was supposed to be drowned as a baby, but instead floated down the Nile in a basket and was raised as an Egyptian prince. Moses. God speaks to him from a bush that is on fire but doesn't burn. Moses has every excuse. I can't speak well. They won't listen to me. I'm nobody. And God says, I am who I am. Now go. 10 plagues hit Egypt. And here's what most people don't know. Every single plague was a direct attack on one of Egypt's gods. God wasn't just freeing slaves. He was dismantling an entire religious system, one miracle at a time. Water turns to blood, frogs, lice, flies, disease, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and then the final plague, the death of every firstborn son in Egypt. But for the Israelites, one way out: sacrifice a lamb, spread the blood on your doorframe, and the angel of death will pass over you. This moment is called Passover. And here's what makes your jaw drop. 1,400 years later, Jesus will be crucified on the exact day the Passover lamb is slaughtered. Same city, same timing, same symbolism. It's not a coincidence, it's a pattern. Pharaoh lets them go, then chases them. The Red Sea parts. They walk through on dry ground. The Egyptian army drowns. 2 million people, free, standing on the other side of the sea. And what do they do next? They complain. 3 days later, we're thirsty, we're hungry, we miss Egypt. God gives them manna, bread that falls from heaven every morning for 40 years. He feeds 2 million people in the desert for 4 decades. That's over 29 billion meals. And they still complained. Moses goes up to Mount Sinai. God gives him the 10 Commandments, the moral foundation of Western civilization to this day. And the people, at the bottom of the mountain, build a golden calf and worship it. Because of their faithlessness, a journey that should have taken 11 days takes 40 years. An entire generation wanders the wilderness and never enters the promised land. But here's what God does during those 40 years that will stun you. He builds an entire system of rituals, sacrifices, and ceremonies. And every single one of them is pointing forward to the same person. Stay with me. Moses dies on the edge of the promised land. He can see it. He just can't enter it. A new leader rises, Joshua. The name Joshua in Hebrew is literally the same name as Jesus in Greek, Yeshua. Both mean God saves. And both lead their people into a promised land. That's not a coincidence. It's foreshadowing written into the names themselves. The Israelites cross the Jordan River. The walls of Jericho fall after they march around them for 7 days, not with battering rams, not with weapons, with trumpets. They take the land. It's a brutal, bloody process, detailed with uncomfortable honesty in the book of Joshua, but they take it. For the next 300 years, Israel is led by judges, a chaotic cycle that plays on repeat. Israel follows God. Things go great. Israel abandons God. Things fall apart. Israel cries out. God sends a deliverer. Things go great again. This cycle, called the Judges cycle, has been studied by historians as one of the most accurate descriptions of how civilizations rise and fall. The pattern is real. The pattern is still happening today. Eventually, the people demand a king. God warns them, "A king will take your sons for his army, your daughters for his courts, your land for his treasury." They want one anyway. God gave them exactly what they asked for, and every warning he gave came true within 2 generations. The first king of Israel, Saul, dies in battle. The second king, David, is called a man after God's own heart, and then commits adultery and murder in the same week. David, the shepherd boy who killed Goliath with a single stone, the warrior who fought lions with his bare hands, the poet who wrote the Psalms, songs so raw and emotionally honest they've comforted billions of people across 3,000 years. And this broken, brilliant, murderous, worshipping man, God makes him a promise that will define the next 1,000 years of history. Your throne will be established forever. And from your family line, a king will come whose kingdom will never end. That promise, called the Davidic covenant, is made around 1000 BC. Matthew's gospel opens with a genealogy proving Jesus is literally a direct descendant of David. The promise wasn't forgotten. It was traced, documented, and fulfilled. David's son Solomon builds the temple, the most spectacular building in the ancient world. Gold everywhere. Craftsmanship that took 7 years and 180,000 workers. Solomon asks God for one thing: wisdom, and God gives it to him. The book of Proverbs, the book of Ecclesiastes. Wisdom so profound it still shapes business strategy, philosophy, and family life today. But here's the tragic twist. The wisest man who ever lived makes the dumbest decision in the Bible. Keep watching. Solomon marries 700 wives and 300 concubines. Most are from foreign nations, and they bring their foreign gods with them. Slowly, the wisest man in the world lets his heart drift. He builds temples to false gods. He dies, and the nation splits in 2, Israel in the north, Judah in the south. And for the next 300 years, the Bible gives us a parade of kings, most of them corrupt, violent, and spiritually bankrupt. Out of 39 kings of Israel and Judah combined, only 8 are described as doing what was right in God's eyes. That's a 20% approval rating. The Bible is not a book about good people. It's a book about a faithful God. Into this chaos step the prophets. Imagine men who stand in the streets, in the courts, in front of kings, and say things that should get them killed. Because it did. Most of them were killed. Elijah, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel. They are the conscience of a nation that has forgotten who it is. The prophet Isaiah writes a chapter, Isaiah 53, that describes a man who is pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our sins, led like a lamb to slaughter, buried in a rich man's tomb. He writes this in 700 BC, 700 years before the crucifixion of Jesus. The north falls first. Assyria sweeps in and destroys Israel. The 10 tribes are scattered, lost to history. Then Babylon comes for Judah, 586 BC. The temple, Solomon's masterpiece, is burned to the ground. The people are dragged in chains to Babylon, hundreds of miles from home. And they sit by the rivers of Babylon and weep. Psalm 137 is a song written in Babylonian captivity. It's one of the most emotionally devastating pieces of literature ever written. How can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? They literally couldn't play music. They hung their harps on the trees. But in Babylon, something extraordinary happens. A young man named Daniel, a Jewish captive, a nobody, ends up as one of the most powerful advisors in the Babylonian Empire. He survives a lion's den. His friends survive a furnace heated 7 times hotter than normal. And Daniel receives visions that map out the rise and fall of empires for the next 600 years. Daniel's prophecy in chapter 9, written in 540 BC, calculates the exact number of years until the arrival of the Messiah. Scholars who've done the math land within 1 year of Jesus' public ministry, written 540 years before it happened. After 70 years of captivity, Persia conquers Babylon. A new king named Cyrus lets the Jews go home. Isaiah names the king who will free the Jewish captives. He calls him Cyrus. Isaiah writes this 150 years before Cyrus is born. Cyrus is referenced by name in a prophecy written before his great-grandfather was alive. The people return. The temple is rebuilt, smaller, less glorious, but rebuilt. And then, the last prophet speaks. Malachi. He warns the people to prepare for someone coming, a messenger, who will prepare the way for the Lord. And then, silence. For 400 years, no prophets, no visions, no new words from God. The world waits. 400 years of silence, the longest God ever went without speaking. And then, one night in Bethlehem, a baby cries. A teenage girl in Nazareth receives a visit from an angel. She's engaged. She's never been with a man. And the angel tells her she's going to be pregnant. Isaiah 7:14, written 700 years before Jesus' birth. A virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel, God with us. That's not a vague prediction. That's a specific biological event written 28 generations in advance. Mary says yes. Joseph almost walks away, until an angel visits him too. He stays. They travel to Bethlehem for a census. There's no room. A baby is born in a stable, wrapped in strips of cloth, placed in a feeding trough. God, in a manger. Shepherds see angels. Wise men follow a star. A paranoid king named Herod slaughters babies trying to kill this child. The family flees to Egypt. Hosea 11:1, written 750 BC, Out of Egypt I called my son. Matthew quotes this as being fulfilled when Jesus returns from Egypt. A prophecy about the Exodus was simultaneously pointing 750 years forward to Jesus. Layers within layers, 30 years of silence. Jesus grows up in Nazareth. He's a carpenter's son. And then, at 30 years old, he walks into the Jordan River to be baptized by a wild man named John. The sky splits open. A dove descends. A voice says, "This is my son, whom I love." And then the Spirit drives him into the desert for 40 days. Notice the pattern. Israel spent 40 years in the desert and failed every test. Jesus spends 40 days in the desert and passes everyone. He's not just a great teacher. He's doing something Israel couldn't do. He's living the story right. 3 years. That's all he has. He heals lepers, opens blind eyes, walks on water, feeds 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish, raises the dead, including a man who has been in the tomb for 4 days. There are 37 recorded miracles of Jesus in the Gospels, but John says at the end of his book, Jesus did many other things. If every one of them were written down, I suppose even the whole world would not have room for the books. 37 is just the sample, but it's not the miracles that shake people. It's what he says. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the resurrection and the life. Before Abraham was born, I am. That last one almost gets him stoned on the spot, because he just used the name God gave Moses at the burning bush to describe himself. C.S. Lewis, the Oxford scholar and former atheist, said about Jesus, "A man who was merely a man and said the sort of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic or the devil of hell." There's no comfortable middle ground with Jesus. He picks 12 disciples, common men, fishermen, a tax collector, a political zealot, and he begins teaching them a new way to live. Turn the other cheek, love your enemies, forgive 70 times 7, the first will be last, the greatest among you is the servant of all. Everything about his kingdom is upside down from the world. 3 years in, the disciples think they know where the story is going. They think he's about to declare himself king and overthrow Rome. But Jesus keeps saying something that confuses them. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. They don't understand what that means yet, but they will. Palm Sunday. Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a donkey, a specific fulfillment of Zechariah 9:9, written 500 years before. The crowds go wild. Hosanna, King of Israel. He goes to the temple and turns over the tables of the money changers. 5 days later, the same crowds will be screaming something very different. The Last Supper is a Passover meal. Jesus picks up the bread and says, "This is my body, broken for you." He picks up the cup and says, "This is my blood, the blood of the new covenant." He's reinterpreting the entire Exodus story around himself. He's the Passover lamb. Right there at the table, Judas, 30 pieces of silver, the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus prays, sweating drops of blood, and asks if there's another way. There isn't. He is arrested. Tried 6 times in one night, illegal under Jewish law, beaten, mocked, a crown of thorns pressed into his skull. Psalm 22, written by David 1,000 years before, opens with the exact words Jesus cries from the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The psalm also describes people mocking, hands and feet pierced, garments divided by casting lots. Written 600 years before crucifixion was even invented as an execution method. 9 a.m. on a Friday. They nail him to a cross. 6 hours he hangs there. The sky goes dark from noon until 3 p.m. The curtain in the temple, 60 feet tall, 4 inches thick, tears in half, from top to bottom. That curtain separated the Holy of Holies, the presence of God, from the rest of the world. Only the high priest could enter once a year. When Jesus dies, it tears open. The Bible is saying the barrier between humanity and God has just been destroyed. Access is now open to everyone. At 3 p.m. Jesus says it is finished and he dies. A soldier stabs him with a spear to confirm it. Blood and water flow out, a medically noted sign of a ruptured heart. He is buried in a borrowed tomb, the tomb of a rich man named Joseph of Arimathea. Isaiah 53 says, "He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death," written 700 years before. Jesus was crucified between 2 criminals, the wicked. Buried in a rich man's tomb, the rich. 1 verse, 2 details, both precise. The disciples scatter. Peter denies knowing him 3 times before sunrise. The women who followed him are the last at the cross and the first at the tomb. Sunday morning. The stone covering the tomb weighed approximately 1.5 to 2 tons. Roman soldiers were stationed to guard it, their lives forfeited if the body disappeared. On Sunday morning, the stone is rolled away. The soldiers are unconscious. The tomb is empty. The burial cloths are folded neatly inside. That last detail, the folded cloth, is one of the most debated facts in ancient history. Mary Magdalene is the first to see him. She thinks he's the gardener. He says her name, Mary. She turns. She recognizes him. And the most important moment in human history lands in a garden, the same setting where the whole story began. Jesus appears to over 500 people after his resurrection, documented by Paul,